The photograph is faded, barely visible. A man in a suit stands beside Thomas Edison, but his face has been deliberately blurred in the archive. Somewhere in a dusty basement, a patent application sits with the original inventor's name scratched out, replaced with another. In a hospital morgue, a woman's cells are harvested without permission, without payment, and those cells will go on to generate billions of dollars while her children can't afford healthcare. They erased their names from textbooks, stole their patents, burned their research. For centuries, the world was told genius had one color. But buried in forgotten archives and unmarked graves lies a truth so powerful it threatens to rewrite everything we thought we knew about innovation itself. Stay until the end to discover the invention you use every day that was stolen from a black genius. And if this story shakes you like it shook us, hit that like button and subscribe, because these stories need to be told. History isn't neutral. It's written by those with the power to write it, and for hundreds of years, that power was used as a weapon. The systematic erasure of black genius wasn't accidental. It was deliberate, calculated, and devastatingly effective. When a black inventor created something revolutionary, the patent office found reasons to reject it. When they couldn't reject it, they reassigned it. When a black scientist made a breakthrough, their white colleagues took credit. When that didn't work, the research simply disappeared. This wasn't paranoia. This was policy. In many states, black people couldn't even legally hold patents. So they worked through white partners who often became white thieves. They published research under pseudonyms. They watched their life's work attributed to others and had no legal recourse, no voice, no justice. And when they died, often young and often poor, history moved quickly to forget them entirely. But here's what the architects of this erasure didn't account for. Truth is patient. It waits in documents that survive, in descendants who remember, in the undeniable evidence of innovation that changed the world. And once you know these stories, once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Every light switch, every traffic light, every medical breakthrough carries invisible fingerprints. The question isn't whether black genius shaped our modern world. The question is how much more advanced we'd be if that genius had been celebrated instead of suppressed. Everyone knows Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, except he didn't. Not really. Edison created a bulb that burned out in minutes, utterly useless for practical application. The breakthrough that made electric lighting possible came from a man whose name has been systematically removed from the story, Lewis Latimer. Latimer was born to escaped slaves in 1848. He taught himself mechanical drawing and engineering, becoming so skilled that Alexander Graham Bell personally hired him to draft the patent for the telephone. But his greatest achievement came when he invented the carbon filament, the component that allowed light bulbs to burn for hours instead of minutes. Without Latimer's innovation, Edison's invention was a parlor trick. With it, the modern world became possible. Edison knew this. He hired Latimer to oversee the installation of electric lights in New York, London, and Montreal. Latimer worked alongside the men who would become titans of industry, the only black professional in rooms of white inventors. He drafted patents, solved problems, and watched as history gave credit to everyone but him. When he died in 1928, there were no headlines, no national mourning for the man who literally illuminated the modern age. Just silence, and then erasure. Today, when someone flips a light switch, they're using Latimer's innovation. Every street lamp, every office building, every home glowing against the night sky exists because of what he created. And almost no one knows his name. Henrietta Lacks was 31 years old in 1951 when doctors at Johns Hopkins Hospital took a sample of her cervical cancer cells without her knowledge or consent. She was a poor black tobacco farmer who couldn't afford treatment at any hospital that served white patients. What happened next would change medical science forever and reveal the depths of exploitation built into the American healthcare system. Her cells did something no human cells had ever done before. They didn't die. In laboratories, human cells typically survived a few divisions before expiring. Henrietta's cells doubled every 24 hours, again and again, immortal. Scientists named them HeLa cells and began shipping them to research facilities around the world. They were used to develop the polio vaccine, to understand cancer, AIDS, the effects of radiation, and toxic substances. They went to space to test the impact of zero gravity on human tissue. They've been bought and sold billions of times over. Henrietta Lacks died in 1951 in the segregated coloured ward of Johns Hopkins. She was buried in an unmarked grave. Her family didn't even know her cells had been taken until 20 years later, when scientists started contacting them for blood samples to further their research. No one asked permission. No one offered compensation. While corporations built billion-dollar industries on HeLa cells, Henrietta's children couldn't afford health insurance. The cruelty is almost incomprehensible. A woman's body becomes the foundation of modern medicine, generating unimaginable wealth and saving millions of lives, while her own family lives in poverty, unable to access the very healthcare advances her cells made possible. It wasn't until 2013, 62 years after her death, that her contribution was formally acknowledged. Her cells are still alive today, multiplying in laboratories across the world, including in the research that led to COVID-19 vaccines. We are all living in a world made possible by what was stolen from Henrietta Lacks. July 24, 1916. A tunnel explosion beneath Lake Erie traps 32 men in a toxic cloud of smoke and gas. Rescue attempts fail. Men who enter don't come back out. The situation is desperate, and then someone remembers the strange hood invented by a black man from Cleveland. They call Garrett Morgan. Morgan arrives with his safety hood invention, a device that allows wearers to breathe in smoke-filled environments. He enters the tunnel and emerges with survivors. He goes back again, and again. By dawn, he's saved multiple lives and become a national hero. Orders for his safety hood pour in from fire departments across the country. For a brief moment, genius is recognized regardless of color. And then the country discovers Garrett Morgan is black. Orders are cancelled. Fire departments return the equipment. Morgan, desperate to save his business, begins hiring white actors to demonstrate the invention at trade shows while he pretends to be the assistant. The country would rather let firefighters die than credit a black inventor. Eventually, the design is stolen, reproduced, and sold by white manufacturers. The gas mask that saved countless lives in World War I and became standard safety equipment was built on Morgan's innovation. But history gave credit to others. But Morgan wasn't finished. He'd seen too many car accidents at intersections, watched the chaos of early automobile traffic. So he invented something else, the three-position traffic signal. Not just red and green, but the revolutionary yellow light that warned drivers of the coming change. He patented it in 1923 and sold the rights to General Electric for $40,000, a fraction of its worth, but more than most black inventors ever received. Today, every traffic light in the world uses Morgan's design. Unlike the gas mask, this invention was too visible, too widespread to be completely erased. Every time you stop at a yellow light, you're responding to the genius of a man who saved your life twice, once with the gas mask firefighters use, and once with the signal that prevents the crash. History tried to hide Garrett Morgan. The traffic light wouldn't let it. Dr. Charles Drew understood blood in ways no one had before. In the late 1930s, as the world careened toward war, he revolutionized the process of separating, storing, and transfusing blood plasma. Before Drew, blood couldn't be stored for more than a week. After Drew, it could be preserved for months. His research created the blueprint for blood banks, the system that would save millions of soldiers' lives in World War II and millions more in the decades since. The American Red Cross put him in charge of blood collection for the US military. He organized the first large-scale blood bank, trained others in his techniques, and became the leading authority on blood preservation. And then the military issued an order. Blood must be segregated by race. White soldiers would receive blood only from white donors. Black soldiers only from black donors. As if blood itself could be racist. Drew knew the science. He knew blood type mattered, not skin color. He protested publicly, calling the policy unscientific and immoral. For speaking truth to power, he was forced to resign. He returned to teaching surgery at Howard University, training the next generation of black doctors who were systematically excluded from white medical schools. On April 1st, 1950, Drew was driving to a medical conference when he fell asleep at the wheel. His car crashed. He was severely injured, losing massive amounts of blood. According to legend, he was turned away from a whites-only hospital and bled to death waiting for treatment at a colored facility. Later investigations disputed this specific detail, suggesting he died from his injuries regardless of where he was taken. But the symbolic truth remains devastating. Colin, the man who revolutionized blood transfusion, who saved countless lives, existed in a country where his race mattered more than his genius, more than his humanity, more than the blood he was losing. Charles Drew died at 45 years old. Every blood donation, every transfusion, every life saved by readily available blood plasma stands as a monument to his genius, and as evidence of a system so poisoned by racism that it would rather segregate blood than acknowledge what Drew knew to be true. We're all the same inside. The year is 1962, and NASA has a problem. They're trying to send a man into orbit, trying to beat the Soviet Union in the space race, and the calculations are impossibly complex. Trajectory, velocity, entry angle, timing. 1 decimal point wrong, and John Glenn dies in space or burns up on re-entry. The IBM computers keep producing numbers, but no one trusts them completely. The technology is too new, too prone to error. And then John Glenn makes a request that will reveal one of NASA's most closely guarded secrets. He refuses to fly until the girl checks the numbers. The girl he's referring to is Katherine Johnson, a black mathematician working in a segregated section of NASA's Langley Research Center. She's been calculating flight trajectories by hand, her mind processing numbers faster and more accurately than the primitive computers of the era. Glenn trusts her calculations more than he trusts the machines. Johnson had been a mathematical prodigy since childhood, attending high school at age 10 and college at 15. But being brilliant while black and female in the 1950s, America meant her genius was something to be hidden, not celebrated. She worked in the colored computers section, a segregated office where black women performed the complex calculations that white male engineers needed but refused to acknowledge. She couldn't use the same bathroom as her white colleagues. She couldn't sit in the same meetings. When she asked questions, she was told that girls don't attend briefings. But the mathematics didn't lie, and eventually even institutional racism had to bow to undeniable competence. Johnson calculated the trajectory for Alan Shepard's spaceflight, for John Glenn's orbit, for the Apollo 11 mission that put humans on the moon. Without her, the moon landing doesn't happen. Without her, America loses the space race. And for decades, almost no one outside NASA knew her name. It wasn't until 2015, when she was 97 years old, that Katherine Johnson received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. A year later, the film Hidden Figures told her story to the world. She lived long enough to see her genius recognized, to hear the applause that was 60 years overdue. She died in 2020 at the age of 101, having witnessed her own resurrection from historical erasure. Every satellite, every GPS system, every space mission builds on the foundation she laid. The mathematics she pioneered, performed while sitting in a segregated office, not allowed to put her name on the papers, sent humanity to the moon. There are so many more. Marie Van Britten Brown, who invented the home security system in 1966 because police response in her neighborhood was dangerously slow. Every doorbell camera, every security monitor, every system that lets you see who's at your door exists because she created it. Otis Boykin, whose invention of the precision resistor controls the pacemaker keeping hearts beating in millions of chests. Dr. Patricia Bath, who invented laser cataract surgery and restored sight to people who'd been blind for decades. Mark Dean, who holds 3 of the 9 original patents for the IBM personal computer, the machine that revolutionized how the world works. Each name represents a genius who fought through impossible barriers. Each name was nearly erased. Each name survives because the truth, eventually, refused to stay buried. This isn't ancient history. This is the foundation our present is built on. Every time we flip a light switch, stop at a traffic light, receive a blood transfusion, use a computer, trust a GPS system, or benefit from medical research, we're standing on the shoulders of black genius that history tried to hide. The erasure continues today, more subtle but no less real. How many brilliant minds never get the chance because of inadequate schools in underfunded neighbourhoods? How many innovations are lost because the patent system still favours those with resources and connections? How many names will we never know because the barriers, while different, still exist? But here's what matters now. You know. You can't unknow this. These names, these stories, these truths are now part of your understanding of how the world works. Lewis Latimer, Henrietta Lacks, Garrett Morgan, Charles Drew, Katherine Johnson, and hundreds more whose names are still waiting to be recovered from the archives where they were hidden. They tried to erase these geniuses because acknowledging them would have shattered the lie that intelligence, that innovation, that genius belonged to one race. They failed. Because truth doesn't die. It waits. It endures. And eventually, it finds voices willing to speak it. Now you know. You can't unknow this. These names deserve to be spoken. These stories deserve to be shared. Every modern convenience carries the hidden fingerprints of black genius, and it's time we stopped calling them hidden. If this video changed how you see history, prove it matters. Like this video so others can find it. Subscribe because we're uncovering more hidden truths. Share this with someone who needs to know. Comment with the name that hit you hardest. Let's make sure these geniuses are never hidden again. They tried to hide these geniuses. They failed. Because truth doesn't die. It just waits for someone brave enough to speak it. That someone is you now. Don't let these names be forgotten again.